First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
I have on the line right now Dr. Kent Hall from MVHS. Doc, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing this morning?
Well, we're a little off today. It's the day before a vacation, so.
Yeah, I think your wife is correct. The day before vacation is usually when the Indians get most restless.
It is. She also believes. My wife believes in craziness on a full moon. She believes it. There's something, and so does the tide, right?
Yeah. Well,
the tide changes based on the moon. My wife believes. She swears that on a full moon, things get crazy in the classroom.
My sister works at the psych unit at St. Elizabeth, and she can attest to that as well.
Okay, be careful. Dr. Hall, what do you think?
Well, I can tell you that as an emergency doc, I always was actually interested in working on full moon days because we definitely had an interesting group of patients that came in.
Yeah, I think there's something about it. It might be a placebo effect, right?
I think it could be.
Could possibly be. But these kids in, first, second, third grade, they don't know it's a full moon. Unless their parents are like, now behave, it's a full moon.
That is true.
So that kind of erases the placebo.
If it can control the tide in the ocean, it most definitely can probably impact.
I want to start off this morning, Doc, with numbers as to where you are. And this is probably the freest holiday weekend we have experienced since March of last year.
Yeah, I would say actually probably since 2019.
Yeah.
So we continue to have 2 patients, 2 COVID-positive patients across the system, 1 in each campus.
You continue to see stories about the Delta variant, and I still this morning reading headlines about how beware, the next one is coming, the next wave is coming. Are we looking at clickbait, or are these viable stories, real stories that we should be nervous about?
So I would say that they are real stories. They may be overly or more dramatic than they need to be, depending upon the story that you're reading. This is what I would say about the Delta variant. It is something to definitely be concerned about. It is certainly more transmissible. It is definitely seems to cause more severe disease. What I will also say, and especially for our community here in Oneida County and in Utica, is that we have a very high vaccination rate.
Right. Yep.
And all of the vaccines have been shown to protect against severe disease from the Delta variant. So, while if you are unvaccinated, I would be very concerned. As a population, I think that we're actually a pretty good spot. And I would also say that, that the fact that we have such a high vaccination rate means that those people that are not vaccinated have less likelihood of coming in contact with somebody who can infect them. Mm-hmm. I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating people not to get vaccinated.
Right.
Because we don't know the next variant that's coming down the pike. And we don't know what's going to happen in terms of whether the vaccines are going to be as effective as they are now for the next variant.
Right.
Remember, the Delta variant started in India and is now worldwide. And the next variant will start somewhere and will also go worldwide because we are a worldwide community. We are not a community of Utica or Oneida County or New York or the United States. So we have to be aware of that and continue to be very vigilant.
But as far as the Delta strain itself, to the community at large, if you've been vaccinated, you're pretty well protected. You're not worried about it. You're not overly worried about it.
Correct. That is.
That's great news. That's great news.
That is. I want to ask you, we had someone calling the other day that said he is a part of a health system and said conversations he's had with other colleagues is that the latest news that came out of the CDC on the heart inflammation in men 30 and under who have taken the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, that the number is higher than expected. The number is higher than they expected, and that is worrisome. And maybe that would be a reason not to get the vaccine. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so I would offer a note of caution on that. So there are a few studies that have been published. One study that I think is very telling actually comes from the U.S. military, and they have given a number of doses. And I think it was 559,000 doses, first and second doses that were given to U.S. military people. They noted 19 cases of myocarditis. They would have noted in that same population some number between 0 and 10. They can't, it's always a range.
Yeah.
And so what that tells me is that there is certainly some association with it, and, you have to believe that there is probably something related to a cause and effect as well. Again, it's mostly in men, and the military is mostly men, but, now taking a step back and looking at the other studies that have been published in the general communities, it seems to be mostly men. It seems to be mostly relatively young people under the age of 40, and it does cause inflammation of the heart muscle, which is called myocarditis.
Yep.
In this small subsection of patients, it is a very small subsection. So yes, it does occur. It does not seem to cause severe disease in that patients do sometimes need to be hospitalized, but the chance of being in an ICU or dying is very, very small. Now, let's take that and put it aside and look at it compared to getting COVID. So if you get COVID, there is inflammation within your entire body, including your heart.
Right.
That is a much higher percentage because we're talking 19 out of 559,000, which is a pretty small number as a percentage. Mm-hmm. Whereas people that get severely ill and have inflammation in their body, if you get COVID, is more in the range of 2 to 3%, which is a much bigger number. So if we were talking about the same thing for the vaccine, then we would have seen it in somewhere between 1,100 and 1,500 patients, and service members, and we saw it in 19. So getting the disease is much worse than getting the vaccine.
Okay. That's interesting, and it certainly you wonder about a lot of the long COVID effects that you keep hearing that people complain about. It has been 6 months since we had COVID in our house. Andrew, you as well. My wife is now, for the very first time, she's beginning to get her smell back.
Wow.
And prior to this...
Thank God.
Prior to this, she could either not smell something or it smelled what she said, what she smelled was plasticky. It's chemically is what she smelled. But now it is just starting to come back.
Yeah, so it is great that she seems to be coming out of the other end of this. There are people who got COVID, a year ago and are still having symptoms. So we just talked about is really just inflammation, and specifically related to the vaccines, inflammation of the heart, which, oh, by the way, there's no indication based on what we know now with millions of doses given of both Pfizer and Moderna that there is excessive inflammation elsewhere. It doesn't mean that we're not going to find it as we continue to look, but if we do, it's going to be a very, very small population. But, there are, what we talked about was inflammation related to the vaccines and then inflammation related to the native disease. But that's only one piece of this. We're also talking about blood clots, and we're talking about, severe damage to your lungs and severe damage to other organs. And then, if and when you recover, then you've got these long COVID symptoms, whether it's brain fog or, lack of smell and taste or just generalized weakness or any of the others. So, again, getting the vaccine, much better for you, much less risky for you than getting the disease.
I want to be I should mention, my wife is very lucky that smell and taste were the only side effects that she had. There are other people that have had much, much worse. So when I talk about that, it's very annoying and very difficult when you can't smell something. I don't think we can until you can't smell food or things that aren't good for you. It is serious, but nothing compared to what other people have gone through. I just wanted to acknowledge that. I do want to. The guy that called in about this also said, but beyond this, Doc, so I'm going to challenge you with his argument. Beyond this, we don't know what this is going to do down the road. It could cause cancer down the road. The vaccine could mean a sterilization of men and women. We don't know what could happen long term. How do you respond to that?
So I would say, yes, we do not know long-term effects. I would not. I would not start to land on specific entities such as sterilization or things like that. And the reason is because that tends to anchor something in somebody's mind.
Right.
What we can say is that these vaccines have been out for 6 months. They've been studied a little bit longer than that, so probably all told a year, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
They have been given to millions of people, but if you're talking about what's going to happen, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're right. We don't know that. We also don't know that with any of the other vaccines that have been developed. And again, messenger RNA or mRNA vaccines are new for infectious disease, but not new vaccines. And, they have been used in other areas, specifically around cancer. And what we have found is in patients that have gotten these types of vaccines, that really the long-term effects have been vanishingly small.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I'm not saying that that's going to be what happens here, but I use that as an example to say, we can be afraid of a lot of things, but I think that we should try to rationalize our fears to a certain extent, and that to me helps me to rationalize it and say, yes, it's possible, but it's not something that I'm going to overly worry about.
Well, and that's the thing is I'm having a hard time understanding how a shot in your arm could lead to something like sterilization.
Well,
you're putting medicine basically in. I don't know the answer to that, Doc. I'll let you answer. Why am I answering?
Well, I almost hesitate to answer because this may also solidify it. But what I will say is that any time that you do something that affects your immune system, you're turning something on that basically is designed. It's a defense mechanism, and it is designed to attack things. If it attacks the wrong thing, then that's a bad thing.
Just like me, a defense mechanism. When Andrew asks a question, I immediately step in. It's a natural. I can't even stop it. I try to stop it. 20 seconds here.
Yeah, I just want to mention quickly, the county does still post daily, but they don't send out to media. We had no cases in Oneida County yesterday. No new cases.
Wow, that's good.
So that's always great news. And there was one other thing. I know my time's running out.
You were going to say goodbye to Dr. Hall and wish him a great weekend.
Goodbye, Dr. Hall. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody. You too. Please be safe and have a great 4th.
And you do the same. Thank you so much. Dr. Kent Hall from MVHS.
You know what I was quickly going to say is on the vaccine, like all these healthcare professionals would be injecting themselves with something that would give them cancer. I mean, hello.
That is true. And if you look at the staggering number of people, the percentage of people who have died of COVID in May, 99.2% were unvaccinated. That says a lot.
Plato's Closet in West Ashley and North Charleston are springing up cash. Just sell us your gently used warm weather styles like tees, shorts, sandals, and more. We're paying cash on the spot for gently used spring styles for guys and girls. Support sustainable fashion. This spring, do your thing and recycle the spring-inspired clothes, shoes, and accessories that are just hanging in your closet for cash on the spot. Let your spring clothes bloom into cash at Plato's Closet. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.